Good evening and welcome to the People's Business. I'm Stacey Russell. The Caribbean Festival of Arts, CARIFESTA 15, is back in Barbados, running from August 22nd to August 31st. It's the creme de la creme of artistic expression in the Caribbean. This year under the theme Caribbean Roots Global Excellence. Tonight, as we count down with much excitement to the event, we have the artistic lead, Michelle Hinkson-Cox, Ian Walcott Skinner, the logistics coordinator, and Andre Hoyte, the Grand Market coordinator in studio to set the stage for CARIFESTA 15. Also joining us on the telephone is the festival's director for global communications, Josanne Leonard. We'll dive into tonight's discussion going for 90 minutes when we come back from this commercial break.
Hey there, it's Mahalia. I want to share something that might be really helpful. If you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, or lonely and have no one to talk to, call Lifeline Barbados. We all face struggles at times in our lives. You're not alone. There's no need to feel ashamed or embarrassed. It's okay to reach out for support. Lifeline Barbados is completely confidential. No one else will know you called. They're there to offer a caring ear and guidance without judgment. And fellas, I want you to know asking for help is a true sign of strength. It takes real courage to reach out. You can also call Lifeline Barbados if you're worried about loved ones who are struggling and you need advice on how to support them. There's a saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, but not everyone has them.
Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we are discussing CARIFESTA 15. And before we get into the discussion, we're going to play you an extract from Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley's address at the launch of CARIFESTA 15 last week.
We intend to be true to our theme of Caribbean Roots, Global Excellence, as we reflect on and celebrate and showcase who we truly are. What it will be is the explosive unleashing of the grand reservoir of Caribbean creativity and capacity for celebration. Yes, we have earned this moment, and we must claim it. CARIFESTA will commemorate where we've come from, where we are at this moment in time, and where we're going on our road to transformation.
Now, the Prime Minister says this is going to be one of the best events yet where CARIFESTA is concerned. And I'd like us to start from the beginning. Let's have a history of CARIFESTA. Where did it all start?
There are two beginnings. There was a beginning in 1952. We often talk about 1972, the dream of Forbes Burnham, the former Prime Minister of Guyana. That was the first in the English-speaking Caribbean. But in 1952, there was actually a festival called CARIFESTA in Puerto Rico. And it brought together, I believe, Trinidad, Guyana, and some of the Spanish countries. So from the very beginning, the Spanish Caribbean was part of CARIFESTA. We moved forward down to 1976. We had Cuba and Barbados for the first time, hosted it in 1981. That was a watershed moment for us. You're talking about Barbados at the time was only 15 years into independence. So we had to build a lot of new venues. You can imagine, I think Michelle was born in 1981. So she keeps reminding us that, hey guys, that's the year that I was born. I think it was a watershed moment because out of 1981, so many things happened. And we often look back at that 10-year period, 1981 to 1991, and we refer to it as the glory days. We had then the opening of the Frank Conomer Hall. The steel shed was repurposed, Queen's Park Theatre. You actually had to book a year in advance to get into Queen's Park Theatre to run a play. There was so much activity coming out of that. Prior to that, I remember growing up as a kid in Barbados, people would say, oh, Barbados doesn't have a culture. And you will constantly hear this thing that, Barbados doesn't have a culture. Jamaica has a culture. Trinidad has a culture. We haven't invented anything. And I think 1981 allowed us, for the first time, to showcase that culture. We use the word today called curating. We say that, we curate it and we package it. I think 1981 did that. So it was an inspirational moment. going forward, and it took us right down to the early 90s. And of course, different countries hosted CARIFESTA over the period. Jamaica, Trinidad hosted it for about 3 times, and now this is the 3rd time that Barbados is hosting it. So you can almost put it into 3 different periods: the early years, up maybe to mid 80s, then from there to about the year 2000, then with the new CARIFESTA with things like the super concert and the grand market that Andre will talk about. So here we are.
Well, Mr. Walcott Skinner, thank you so much for that opening, and I am really appreciating the Barbadian perspective that you have brought to it. But can we have more of a regional perspective? Why is CARIFESTA so important? Why is it still relevant today?
I think CARIFESTA is the chance that we get as a people to showcase who we are. So, you know, you don't get another opportunity in the Caribbean to see arts and culture come together in the way that it does. You will see it for sports. We have CARIFESTA every year, but you won't really get that chance for arts and culture. And I think that's one of the key things. One of the beautiful things about the CARIFESTAs that I've been to, clearly not in 1981, but all of the other CARIFESTAs that I've been to, it's a chance for artists across the region to network. It's a chance for artists across the region to collaborate and to share. There are a number of relationships that come out of CARIFESTA, cross-cultural relationships where we kind of, you know, do projects together after the festival. So it really is an important moment because it allows us to share with our brothers and sisters across the region, and certainly in this particular dispensation of CARIFESTA, for us to share beyond the region into a more global landscape as well.
Sharing what we have, sharing artistically.
Sharing who we are.
Sharing who we are.
Yes.
That is brilliant. But what else? What about the economic benefits? Perhaps you can speak to that,
Well,
Mr.
certainly,
Hoyte?
yeah, certainly, as Ian said, there are a lot of things that happen once you have CARIFESTA. They, as you know, we're talking about coming together, but there's a lot of activity that happens. There's a lot of frameworks that are constructed as a result of CARIFESTA. It's also a time when a lot of the cultural heads get together and talk policy. We always say out of CARIFESTA in 1981 came the National Cultural Foundation, which meant that the legislation and the framework for the establishment of that had to come out of that activity. So you have the NCF Act happening in 1983, and the NCF established in 1984, and all of the things that we are responsible for the development of culture happens, and that happens across the region as well. In the more recent CARIFESTAs, we had the Culture Industries Act coming just before that, and in fact Barbados was the first country in Latin America and the Caribbean who had a Culture Industries Act specifically, and that happened in 2015. Just before the 2017 CARIFESTA.
Right.
But what it set the stage for was, how do we treat to the economics of creativity? And so that in that CARIFESTA we looked at having a bar shopping mall and not just a marketplace where people just come and just sell, but it was about trading, it was about developing ideas, it was about having international buyers come and see products and possibly hire designers and hire musicians. So it's really turning on that global economics at that time. And we're also doing the same thing now. It was actually copied in 2019 in Trinidad. So our model was adopted in Trinidad for that same purpose, the kind of economic drive that you want to talk about. So I think this is another time for us, as we are now talking about not just culture as you see it, the protection of intangible cultural heritage, but also all of the things that are impacting us. So when we talk about creating systems and spaces, we're also considering the environment. We're looking at how agriculture and the blue economy could be included, sustainable goals. So this is that time for us now to shape culture in a different and a broader narrative than just, you know, how people view it as, okay, we're just going to listen to music or we're just going to eat some food. No, we're talking about developing the MSMEs in culture, so designers and businesses, ensuring that what they produce is sustainable, all those things. So, you know, we have some for example, we have someone who's coming to talk about how do you make hair from plantain husk. I mean, that is phenomenal in its own sense. And you know that Barbadians love hair, you know. So that's where our mind is really shaping this festival. How can we take it into the future?
I want to touch on the other part of the economics as well, the immediate economic impact of hosting such a big festival. Because it really is a big festival. It's almost like a mini Olympics. I think today we have about 26 countries, and we're looking at 33 countries, including from as far as Panama, Colombia, Brazil, Ghana, which is kind of new in terms of, you know, widening it to the diaspora as well. So when you think of the immediate economic impact, we're looking at 3,000 delegates, all of the artists, the people in the grand market. So they're coming in, they're staying at hotels. You know, they have to pay, you know, that's a spend. So that's going to, the multiplier effect, you start, the same thing that happened with World Cup cricket. So whenever the country hosts something this grand, there's a net economic impact.
So you're preempting me there. You're preempting me. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the benefits to the wider economy, especially given that it's happening during the summertime, and this can be an event to really stimulate our tourism product during those typically slow summer months. But I want to go back to talk a little bit more about the business side of things. Who is funding CARIFESTA? Who generally funds CARIFESTA?
Well, it's generally funded by the host country. That host country decides on what the budget would be like, and of course they also invite the possible sponsors as well to be on board. So that's the general model that we've had each year. Each time there's a host hosting the CARIFESTA.
Yeah, there's a host country agreement. So it's almost like the Olympics. You have to bid for the Olympics. So countries we don't really bid in the Caribbean. We just raise our hands and say we want to host the next one. So coming off of that agreement, then the host country agrees to underwrite the cost of the festival. And then there's a lot of sponsorship as well.
Do we have an idea of how much it's costing us?
In the range of maybe 5 million Barbados dollars. But like I said earlier, we're going to gain so much more than what we're spending.
Okay, let's begin to talk about the content of this festival. CARIFESTA 15, I'm looking at the artistic lead. What can we expect? Break down the various aspects of this festival.
Right.
What are we getting?
We are getting something from everything. Literally, we are representing as many of the art forms as possible. So you have the performing arts, that drama, dance, and music. There's visual arts, both curated visual arts exhibitions, and we also have programming in terms of workshops, mural paintings, and that kind of thing. We also have, and I'm going to try not to forget any, culinary arts. We have fashion, film and video, literary arts. We have symposia as well, and big conversations where we come together to discuss key things about ourselves, really. And who am I
Spoken
forgetting?
word.
But no, the spoken word comes under the theater. Literary arts as well. And we also have what we're calling icon nights, and that's a chance for us to celebrate the people that have brought us to where we are culturally. So we're celebrating icons from across the region, super concerts as well. There's a little bit of something for literally everybody. I'm hoping I haven't forgotten any of the disciplines, but it's basically a piece of every single one of the art forms that you can find in there. Did I say fashion as well?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to come back and ask you to tell us a little bit more in terms of the various activities, the various venues. How are we going to be able to, I don't know, divide ourselves over these 10 days? But before we move on, what is really the end goal of CARIFESTA 15?
The end goal. We are celebrating who we are, right? We are celebrating who we are. And there are opportunities for the regional and international collaboration. And we're hoping that that then creates a legacy. So we don't want that CARIFESTA happens August 22nd to August 31st, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we are creating opportunities for our artists to potentially export their craft, export their art, perhaps even tour the performing arts as well, tour in visual arts exhibitions. As Andre would have mentioned as well, the buyer's market, so that you have opportunities for business development in there as well. So it is not just about the 10 days of the festival. Legacy is a very important part of what we're doing, and also sustainability. So one of the things, for instance, that Ian can perhaps speak a little bit more to is the legacy component, because we are really building that out to make sure that we have something to hold on to beyond the festival.
Okay, well, Mr. we're coming right back to
Yeah,
you.
the ball was thrown in my direction.
This is, I've called it a three-peat,
Yeah.
although it hasn't happened consecutively. This is the third time that Barbados has the honor of hosting CARIFESTA. 1981, 2017, now in 2025.
Yeah.
And we've touched on some of it as we started earlier, but dig in a little bit more and tell us, what is the legacy from those previous hostings that we can now call upon as we host 2025?
I'm going to quote my CEO, Carol Roberts, and festival director. And she reminds us every time we speak about legacy that after each CARIFESTA, Barbados is better in terms of its cultural industries and the entertainment sector. So if you look at 1981, like I said earlier, we had venues, new venues. There was an unleashing of creativity for that 10-year period. So those are the intangibles. And then the tangibles, you look at better venues. So this year, I think we're having 3 additional venues that are being built out. We're upgrading some of the older venues as well. So that's a concrete legacy. 40 years ago, we talked about a 10-year legacy. Life is happening a lot faster, so we're talking now about a 5-year legacy. So coming out of this CARIFESTA, we've already built in programming for the next 5 years. So yes, CARIFESTA is expected to happen every 2 years, but like Michelle said, artists come together. And so you say, well, next year we're gonna have a film festival, or next year we're gonna do a fashion show. All of that is part of the legacy. So that programming is already designed and built into this year's CARIFESTA.
Okay. We're going to a commercial break, but when we come back, I'm going to be asking about those venues, the new ones that are coming on stream and the ones that will be upgraded. We are talking CARIFESTA 15. See you after this commercial break.
There is a saying, you can find a Bajan anywhere. Are you a Bajan living abroad? Or do you know of one who has migrated to another country? Well, we at Morning Barbados would love to have you or them on our Bajan Affair segment. Share your amazing stories, experiences, and how you have adapted to a new culture. Send us an email to morningbarbados@cbc.vb. And together we will travel the world.
Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're discussing CARIFESTA 15, celebration of the Caribbean arts. And before we went to the break, we were talking about the legacy of the previous 2 events that we hosted in 1981 and 2017, and how that's feeding into what we're doing now in 2025. You mentioned 3 new venues are coming on stream and upgrades planned for others to facilitate CARIFESTA 15. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so the first venue is going to be the CARIFESTA Village. That's in the Waterford area. That's 4 acres. So think of an expo where all of the super concerts will take place. You're going to have your grand market there. That's where you're going to have your hive of activity. And then there's the Richard Stout Amphitheater in the Botanical Gardens. And the third one is the Newton Performing Arts Center. So those are the National Performing Arts Center. So those are the 3 new venues. And all the other venues will be touched up.
Okay.
you know, painting, and we're doing lots of training. Andre can speak more about that. So all of the technical areas, all of the technical expertise, we are bringing that in and training Barbadians as well. So that's part of the legacy.
Okay, great. Our artistic lead, Michelle Hinkson-Cox, tell us what will be happening at these various venues. What can we anticipate at particular places?
Okay, so there's a lot. There's a lot. Let me just start by saying that. At the moment, we have over 150 different events across the 10 days. The National Performing Arts Center, for instance, that will be hosting some of the larger productions, multimedia productions, performing arts. We will be using Daphne Joseph Hackett Theatre, of course, for theatrical productions. Frank Collimer Hall is going to be a mix between theatre and dance. We have a number of venues that we're looking at as well for visual arts exhibitions. Going through the list in my head. But we have different things that are happening at all the different venues. So the Grand Market, for instance, I think is the one place that has a little bit of everything.
Yes.
Right? There are stages at the Grand Market. It's really quite a fantastic layout. So at the Grand Market, you can come and you can hear literary arts readings. You can see short performances, lunchtime concerts, fashion shows.
Yeah,
There's the country nights and the larger super concerts. So
the
you
live
have,
lab. Talk about the live lab.
and there's the live lab.
Yeah.
Well, before
That's
we
an
get to
innovation.
talking about this new innovation of the live lab, we have a caller on the line. Good night, caller. Kindly go ahead.
Yes, hi, good night, Stacey. How are you doing?
I'm good, Kamal.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, I have a couple of questions for the panel. Good night to the panel. Let me thank you so much for this extended and significant discussion based on the topic. My question is, we know that culture is the morals, mores, rights, righteousnesses, and all the aspects of a society that make it up. Now, my question is, where is the African culture different from the Caribbean culture in terms of where we're going from aspects and topics like the use of the culture for reparations and so on? And my final question is, there's film, there's television, there's radio, there is theater, there is performance, spoken word, and so on. My question, and that first question was from Michelle. Good night to you, Michelle. This question is for Andre. Good night, Andre.
Good night. Good night.
Yes. Where is the aspect of the freedom of the Caribbean in terms of CARIFESTA, looking forward to the different media, the different actual modes to celebrate and communicate to the people? Where is it happening? What is it going? Where is it? What is it doing in terms of the actual people on the ground?
Okay. Thank you. Michelle?
So I'm trying to see if I understand the caller's question. He's asking where we are having discussions about reparations.
What is different between our culture in the Caribbean and that of Africa, and how does that feed into the reparations discussion?
Right.
Right. So we, as you would have heard in the Prime Minister's speech at the beginning, we are looking at where we came from. So, of course, in the Caribbean, we are a melting pot of several different cultures, Africa being, the continent of Africa being one of them, because we always tend to think Africa and forget that there are several different cultures on the continent.
Europe, India.
Right?
It's where we all
and then we have the European culture, the Asian culture as well. So, and of course the indigenous culture of the region. So we are going to be looking at all of those things within the context of the festival. And one of the things that we're doing, for example, Ian mentioned it earlier, curating different events. So there's an event, for example, Saltwater Tongues. And what is that? Basically, we are encouraging different delegations from around the region to send storytellers or dancers or drummers to come and talk about that question of where we came from. We all pretty much came by sea originally, so the sea kind of joins us together, and we're looking at that. We do have participation in the festival from the continent, so we do have Ghanaians that will be coming to the festival as well.
Nigeria.
And Nigeria. We are kind of creating a space where we can have those dialogues as well. What are the similarities between our cultures? what are the things that have grown out of, as Kamal would call it, the creolization of the region. All of these cultures coming together and creating something that is new. And the thing is, we talk a lot about the African culture, and we forget that culture is dynamic. It is not static. So what some people think African culture, and I really don't like saying African culture, because again, there are so many cultures on the continent. In fact, there are so many cultures in any one country on the continent. But what we think of when we say that, oftentimes is not what actually exists, because it is a dynamic process. They're constantly being fed with influences from other experiences, from cultures, from modernization, globalization, all of these different things. And we are going to be,
we are influenced by the confluence
so
of all
we are
the
also
cultures in the
creating a
Caribbean.
space through the symposium and the big conversations events to talk about these things that are actually quite relevant to who we are as a people and where we're going with who we are.
And I would also add to that, Michelle, that we've really followed the Reclaiming Our Atlantic Destiny strategy. And we at the NCF, we started our negotiations and discussions and experiences with Guyana, for example, in 2023, coming out of the ACTIV and the IATF program that existed. So we've started discussions with factories, for example, in Africa about supply chain challenges in fashion and artisanal productions. So people may only see, again, what they perceive culture to be, but the actual process of actually engaging, talking about production of yarns, discovering that some of the African fabrics that we talk about don't really represent a particular group, and going into discussions about how can we look at printing and having something that represents us and mass production of these things and distribution of them. Even from a film perspective, how can we immerse ourselves in the experience of film production and writing? We recently, out of that, created a co-production series that we had where we produced 5 shorts, which included writers from Barbados, co-writers from Nigeria and Ghana, a producer who's Nigerian American. So those are the tangible examples of how it is working. Perhaps we don't shout about it loud enough, but that's an example of how we actually put some of those policies in place.
It really was a philosophical. It was a philosophical question, and I think Michelle touched on it. We have a space called the Big Conversations, and that's where we're going to have these really in-depth. Well, they call them big conversations, but in-depth, and this what we call problematizing these issues and talking openly about them. So that's the beautiful thing about CARIFESTA as well. You're bringing all of these brilliant minds together.
Okay, great. Now the caller's second question, which he directed to you, we're talking about what the artists are bringing and the benefits of them coming together. But he's asking, what about the people on the ground? What about us who might not be artists, who are just wanting to turn up and attend these events? What does it mean?
Well, I think from certainly where I am sitting, what we are creating is really about an experience that involves not just the artists, not just the organizers, but members of the public and how they can be involved. I know that in visual arts, they're creating some really interactive, shall I say what they are?
Yeah, of course. No more
Installations that consider things like the disabled, for example, and being able to be part of this festival, where sound is something that we take for granted, and for some people, that's a challenge. So it takes all those things into account. The ability for Barbadians to contribute to our projects, where we're looking at sustainable use of plastics in the creativity of what we're doing. So you're going to be hearing calls for people to also, bring materials and so on for those installations and murals that that are being developed. But certainly from a ground market perspective, it's open, it's free. A lot of the content is free. Yes, there are paid activities. But the Grand Market opens from 8 a.m. until midnight each day. And on some days we go a little past midnight. and Michelle and Ian mentioned the Live Lab, and that's an opportunity for people to come together. They may have had a choreographer or a dancer or you know, someone who they always wanted to work with. You know, come engage with the person.
There's a fringe element.
Yeah, and you're able to create with them. From the fringe perspective, we have a number of the fringe activities that are happening, so it's not just the Grand Market alone, but we will have those additional outlets where people can be involved. We are also positioning screens and so on in some spaces, so you don't necessarily have to come down to Grand Market, but you could be, for example, in Spicedown and still see what's happening. We're using a lot of technology, particularly in film. There are a number of film shorts that you may be able to view in the van stand, for example, or while you're traveling on a bus. So all of that is really considering the public on a whole, how they could be involved, how they can touch and see and taste and hear what we will be presenting to them.
I just want to chime in quickly on that.
Quickly, we're about to go to the break.
Okay, before the break. I think there's also a strategy of audience development. We're using CARIFESTA 15 to redevelop audiences. So the question is both timely and a very good question, because the idea is to bring Barbadian audiences back out. They're the traditional audiences who will go to dance and theater, but we want new audiences. And invariably, that's the kids, the children. You know, it's summer holiday, the parents, and what a better time to engage them over the summer vacation.
Well, what has already stuck with me is the Grand Market running from 8 a.m. to midnight.
Yeah.
On that note, we're taking a commercial break and we're coming right back with more of The People's Business.
Some ask, what makes Barbados so special? We at Morning Barbados say it's you, our exceptional youth. You are talented, resilient, and inspirational. You are the epitome of the Barbadian spirit, testing the boundaries of your creativity. If you are an entrepreneur, artist, baker, designer, author, or have done anything you think should be highlighted, email us at morningbarbados@cbc.bb. Let us show the world our exceptional Bajan youth.
The Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment's Bridges television series is back. Join us every Wednesday at 8 p.m. with a repeat on Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. on CBC TV 8. Don't you miss it.
God will not give you a job. God will not call you to do something and then not give you the capacity to have it, to make it happen. He will give you the
discussions, and it appears to be a very exciting time for the region, particularly Barbados. And I'm wondering though, we keep hearing about the new venues, the Botanical Gardens, the Newton Center and so on, but most of these venues are centralized locations, St. Michael, Christchurch, and very often persons in the country feel kind of left out when it comes to these activities. No, we just had the big gathering and so on, but I certainly believe that a festival of this nature should reach out to communities, and here's an opportunity where we can have some of our regional teams going into communities like Haynesville, Deacons, St. Andrew, Bagatelle, Belle Plaine, St. John, where we can take the culture to those persons. And as one of the panelists said, it brings new audiences to the cultural landscape of Barbados. I heard tonight the way how culture can be used to stimulate economic growth and development. But I also believe that we can use culture as a way and means to provide alternatives to deviant and antisocial behavior. We are currently experiencing criminal activity among our young people, and we certainly believe that culture can seek to address these issues and give our young people a bit more meaning. So I am quite interested to hear if we can use CARIFESTA and the performing arts to reach out to these urban communities, to expose them to what not only Barbados, but what the region has to offer.
Your response?
So, absolutely. We have decentralized some of the events within the festival. So, for example, for dance, we have an event called the Road Party Bus, right? And what that is that it's going to be taking different dance groups, not just Barbadian dance groups, but into communities like the same one that the caller mentioned, like Haynesville, going into the Pine. And they're taking the culture into those spaces to interact with the communities there. We do have film, so there's going to be a film challenge that's happening as well, which is going to be, again, across the country. We also are going to be having different murals that are happening across the country. We would understand that there are certain events that it is difficult to decentralize in some cases because you will need that large performance space, which we don't have in some of the more rural communities. But we are looking at community centers and schools across the region where we may have some of the smaller performances during the Fringe Festival, sorry. So we are going to be decentralizing. We are going to be going into some of those same communities mentioned. Spikestone is going to have activity as well.
Alexandra School.
So we are going across the region. I don't want people to think that because we mentioned renovation of venues in the, more kind of town side that we've forgotten the rest of the country. We haven't. So we are going to be having activity across the island.
Yeah, there's still an opportunity for volunteers. We have an interesting volunteer package this year. We're looking for 300 volunteers. We are already at 265.
Okay.
Yeah, and the idea is that after CARIFESTA, we leave a pool of trained individuals. So today alone, we trained 84. Last Saturday, we trained 150 of the volunteers. So there's still an opportunity to volunteer. If you're retired or if you have young teenagers from, I think, 16 or 18? 16, and they want to volunteer for the festival, they'll be trained. They'll get a little trala, as the Prime Minister likes to call it, and a volunteer kit. They'll get their shirt. If they speak a foreign language, we're dealing with about 4 or 5 different languages. Dutch from Suriname, French, Spanish, Portuguese, the Brazilians are coming as well, and of course English. So anyone that can speak any of those languages, you're free to volunteer. You can go to our website, carifesta.net. is live. A lot of the information is there, and that will take you to the Instagram pages, to our social media pages. The thing about when you go to the website, there's also a link there to click WhatsApp, and you will talk directly to us. And we will send you the links to register as a volunteer.
Okay.
So that's an opportunity.
Just before I take a caller who's on the line, tell me, what are the volunteers doing? What are you training them to accomplish?
So the volunteers are being trained in cultural diplomacy, etiquette. They're dealing with different cultural sensitivities, the do's and don'ts when you interact with different cultures. So they're being trained in that. Manners, basically. We want to leave a very good impression on our visitors when they come for that period over the 2 weeks. So all of that training is taking place, and that's what we call the top level cultural diplomacy training. And at the second level, then they'll be trained specifically. So if you're attached to front of house, working with the venues, you'll be trained in that area. We're going to use about 60 to work on the buses that will be transporting the delegates from location to location. So imagine the opening ceremony, 33 countries, and they all have to be bussed in to the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony. So we'll have volunteers on those buses as well, speaking the languages, interacting with them. So they'll be trained specifically on how to interact with our international delegates.
And they work across the festival as
well.
Excellent. We have a caller on the line. Go ahead, caller.
I have 2 questions. One is, if you have a young child or person who has additional needs like autism, and they're becoming overwhelmed with school busyness. Is there a quiet tent or space that's directed for people that need to have that space?
Yes,
and
we are.
the other is the cost to enter. Is that for locals? Is there a special price, especially people with additional needs, special needs, disabilities, or children or children?
I didn't hear the question.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I believe the caller is asking about facilities for or provisions for people with
For the
special
differently
needs.
able, yeah.
And she's also asking about special pricing.
Right. So, so currently, what we in our current festival structure, we do consider all the needs for persons with challenges and disabilities. So whether that's from ensuring that the space, the infrastructure is there,
Ramps.
bathroom ramps, whether we have persons who can sign, even physical persons who can assist. That is something that we would also be having in the festival. So that's a standard practice that we have, and in terms of broadcast, it's included in all of our broadcasts, things that you can see from stage. We also have that as well. So yes, that's a standard that we will be introducing. The second part of the question is
It was
in relation
difficult to
to
hear.
prices, special prices.
Yes, in
Okay.
terms of admission to various events. I know you said some of them are free.
Yes,
I would imagine.
most of the events are free. In terms of those events that will be paid, they would probably just have a standard rate. But where it's an event that children could also attend, they would also have the rates for children as well. I don't think that but we can take that back, a for special needs as well. Whether we have to bring them in to the venue. So that's something we can take back, certainly.
Okay, we have another caller on the line.
Wow.
Go ahead, caller.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I was wondering, with all these security, all these crime rates, all these incidents happening at Spring, what are they doing for security in CARIFESTA? Would there be added security for the artists and patrons?
Yes, definitely. We have a national organizing committee of which the police and defense force and the security services,
All of the agencies.
are members of, and we meet frequently. Of course, we wouldn't share what the security plan is here, but that is something that's
There's a very robust plan that follows international best practice, and we use the same blueprint, as it were, for World Cup. They just concluded World Cup, and Colonel Granham is heading that overall security architecture. So rest assured, that's taken into consideration and being actively pursued as we speak.
Okay, excellent. Now, Mr. Walcott Skinner, you're responsible for logistics.
Yes.
And I'd imagine this is both external and internal logistics. Tell me, what really will you be responsible for?
Everything. Logistics run through the entire festival. So imagine Andres, well, we call it Andres, but the Grand Market. So all of those countries have to ship their goodies, their art and their food and different things that they'll be selling at the Grand Market ahead of time. So all of that has to be coordinated. That comes on the logistics. The movement of delegates. So you're looking at 60 buses, different sizes. So Anguilla's delegation is about 22. Trinidad just told us 140. Guyana 140. So you have to be able to move those persons on time, to get them to venues, rehearsals, to the big events for a 10-day period, but even before, arriving at the airport and departing after the 10 days. So all of that comes under logistics. And then, of course, we're importing stuff from overseas as well. So you have to be tracking that constantly to make sure that it gets here on time. There's always a plan B. In case something isn't ready on time, then you have to move to plan B. We have a VOC, which is an operational center at the Grand Market, which is we call the CARIFESTA Village. So that's kind of like your central operational unit there, and there's a secretariat right now in Belleville where Michelle's team, Andre's team, the logistics team, media, all of us there, we work there full time preparing for the festival.
Okay. Well, we did say in the beginning that joining us by telephone will be the Global Communications Director for CARIFESTA 15, Josanne Leonard. She's now on the line with us. Good night, Miss Leonard. How are you?
Hi, Stacey. Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the People's Business.
Okay, well, I hope I'm not getting too reverb there, a bit of feedback, but it's fine. Good evening to colleagues in the CARIFESTA team and to the audience here in Barbados.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, Miss Leonard, you're responsible for global communications. This is a regional festival, but it has global reach. How are you planning to reach out to those beyond CARICOM?
Well, I was saying to Ken just before I came on, I kind of wanted to bookend the conversation that has been taking place in terms of CARIFESTA and what it means to us. The fact that we are in a time when the Caribbean, like the rest of the world, is really facing a number of headwinds and challenges. And the themes running through CARIFESTA 15 are really seeking to relocate us in that space of ourselves, looking at ourselves as Caribbean people and telling our stories through our prisms, using our voices, our cultural forms, and the rest of it. To your specific question about the how, that's multi-pronged. For example, we're on CBC tonight, and one can easily go online and see CBC online. So that we'll be using a combination, in the strictest sense of the word, a combination of traditional media, online platforms, social media, of course. And because what we're attempting to do is to do something with CARIFESTA that we've attempted in years or in previous CARIFESTAs, but have not been as successful, I think. And that's because there is a disconnect even with us within the region and media. We know in real time what may be going on in the United States now. Cory Booker on his feet for 25 hours, but I couldn't tell you what was happening in Bridgetown if I was sitting down in Port of Spain or any part of the Caribbean. And I think while social media provides us with an opportunity to address some of these things, it really does beg the question as to how we mobilize our own content, uplink our content, and be able to tell our stories through all the various platforms that we have. So it's a sort of roundabout way, Stacey, of saying that we'll be harnessing everything at our disposal and trying to amplify. Tonight, for example, in Barbados, just this past week, the Regional Coordinating Committee was here in Barbados to look at the planning, iron out kinks, pose their questions, etc. And one thing we impressed upon them, and I can tell you from coming out of meetings chaired by the Prime Minister herself, is that this idea of us speaking with each other, sharing with each other, exchanging with each other becomes really, really vitally important in this time. And so we're hoping, too, that we're going to work through our various tourism ministries of culture, ministries that have responsibility for communication, to actually give support to their delegations before they come into Barbados for August 22nd. And at the same time, we've actually been quite engaged. I have to make a plug because we have a little regional content team in which we're looking at amplifying the stories of the region and conversations that align with some of the things that may be happening in CARIFESTA itself, for example, during the actual CARIFESTA period. So I can tell you, in the month of July, as an example, the International Labour Organization is having the World of Work. And the month of work allows us to talk about cultural workers in terms of the cultural economy, as one of those conversations that makes sense into artists, and so coming into the various symposia and big conversations during CARIFESTA 15. But what are some of those issues that putting the artists at the center of conversations? So we have that one coming up pre-CARIFESTA. We have one coming up on AI and intellectual property. Today we actually finalized one. You talk about fireside chats. We've given it our distinct Caribbean flavor to call it the Chulha chat. And for those of you in Barbados who don't know what a Chulha is, well, it's I guess what the Jamaicans will call their outdoor oven that they do their jerk in. And in Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname and Guyana in particular, we know that people of East Indian extract have a chulha. And it's having the confidence for us to reimagine all the things that we have discarded to become quote-unquote first world, when in truth and fact, this is the great experiment of our time. We are the new world, the Caribbean. Everyone is here, whether they came through enslavement, indentureship, forced migration, well, not forced migration, but looking for a better life. All the peoples of the world converge here in the Caribbean. And that's the kind of confidence that we're going into CARIFESTA 15 with, reaffirming that Caribbeanness. I am a Caribbean, as I said the other night at the launch, because it doesn't matter how much technology we have, how grand the spaces we have. If we lack that cultural confidence, if we don't see the possibilities in our own eyes and feel it in our own belly, then we're just going to become purveyors of someone else's interpretation of ourselves. And that's why CARIFESTA is so important. I heard one of your callers asking about us, the ordinary people. We do all kinds of things as ordinary people. And I think in the programming, there have been some very clever cues to themes, thematic things like Pot Turn Down and Sunday Lunch. We have a campaign that we're hoping we still could do, which is called Better Belly Bust Than Good Food Waste. We have these versions all throughout the region. We have things that look at our expressions. I would say we tutulbe in Trinidad, meaning we kind of chipidi, or we have a tabanka. There is a corresponding treatment of that in every single Caribbean territory. You say aki in Jamaica, in Barbados, for what we call chenet in Trinidad, for what they call guinnep in Guyana and guinnep in Jamaica. So it is reimagining all of these things, our foods, our herbs, our spices, all kinds of interesting conversations. I mean, I'm really anticipating that the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation is one of the longest legacy media houses in the region, for example, will be front and center. And I was talking with Tisha Hines, your head of TV, the other night at the launch, will be at the front and center of drilling down and bringing all these experiences that we could share with each other. Every parish, every gap, every yard in Jamaica, every trace in Guyana, every backyard in Trinidad and Tobago or Suriname must feel that there's a screen or there's a phone or there's a neighbor's something where they could bubble a pot and they could watch the opening and closing ceremonies of CARIFESTA. That they could watch a super concert. That they could tune into a conversation. So we have a big task, but it's not Josanne and the CARIFESTA Directorate. It really is how we all plug in and carry the message.
Okay, Ms. Leonard, I'm going to ask you to stay on the line. Please don't go, but we're taking a short commercial break and we're coming right back with more of The People's Business.
Welcome to Nature's Discount, the ultimate health food store. At Nature's Discount, we have thousands of quality products at great prices.
Hi guys, Dottie here with Nature's Discount, and today we are talking about solar ray, microbiome, probiotics, and why you should be taking them.
And we have well over 3,000 amazing products to help you get healthy.
For your health tips, tune in to CBC TV 8 every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for Nature's Discount, sponsored by Get Healthy Incorporated.
Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're discussing CARIFESTA 15, celebrating Caribbean arts. And just before we went to the break, we were talking with our Global Communications Director for the festival, and she mentioned artists having to rely on their craft, that sometimes it's not consistent, it's not stable. What scope does CARIFESTA have for artists who are generally associated with the gig economy to make them be seen as people who are providing viable services to the economy, to be seen as people who can choose this as a viable career that they can rely on to feed themselves and their families?
So I'm going to answer this with both of my hats on.
Right.
I'm also the head of the Theatre Arts Department at Barbados Community College. And we always have students that come in with, stars in their eyes, right? I always say when I started in the performing arts, there really was no idea what kind of scope I would have beyond this. My father, who is perhaps the longest standing playwright of Barbados, Anthony Hinkson, was like, you're going to do theater for what? Because at school, I was a science student, all sciences. We didn't have CXC theater back then, so all I did was sciences. And then I left there, I went to BCC, did performing arts, and I guess, as I say, the rest is history. There are so many opportunities now, and if we just look at Barbados alone, for making a career in the arts through an educational track, right? What happens with a festival like CARIFESTA? You graduate, let's say, from BCC, or you graduate from EBCCI at UE, you come out of any one of the arts-based CXC programs, and then what? With CARIFESTA, you have an opportunity to showcase your craft beyond a Barbadian audience. And so when, as a musician, for instance, you go into Andre's Live Lab, you go into the Buyer's Mart for, I keep saying Andre's Live Lab, sorry. You go into the Buyer's Mart where you have buyers that are coming in to look at what are the products that are being created here. So you have scouts who are coming in to look at the performances. So CARIFESTA now creates an opportunity for you to go beyond that. We are also providing a platform for collaboration. I spoke about that a little bit earlier. So we have international performances that are going to be coming in and collaborating with our local performers and technicians. So you can imagine you have an international, I'm not going to say who, stand by for that, but you have high-rated performances and you get to be stage management on that show. You get to be actors, dancers, singers in that performance. If that performance now decides that they want to tour in the region, you become kind of like first pick, because they have a model where it's a collaborative cast and team. So you don't have to bring all of your people from outside of the region because you have a team that's already here. So there's so many opportunities within CARIFESTA for that career in the arts to blossom. And we have so many students in Barbados who are taking that plunge, like some of us did many years ago. And in some cases, there are people older than I am who may not even have had the opportunity to study in the arts, but they have come up as apprentices, right? And the apprentice model is still a very good model to follow. But CARIFESTA gives you that opportunity between being the volunteer or actually being involved in the performance itself or the Grand Market, displaying your craft. I suspect that Andre probably has people in the Grand Market that we don't know actually are producing, let's say, earrings, pottery, different types of artisanal work. We've been told not to just call it craft. Artisanal work. And all of this is going to be on show, not just for the region, but for a global audience. And I think that is where the real opportunity comes.
Yeah, and I think that's
sorry.
I think that's a demonstration of the actual creativity as a business, and quite often we don't see it as that, but it's actually happening. My hat as head of business development at the NCF also allows me to see the scale of Barbadian and regional creatives who are actually living and breathing daily their creativity. They're also inspired. We had a chat a week and a half ago about potential persons for our big conversations who have Caribbean roots. They have the Headleys, and we can call so many names of people actually living their craft. So previously, or we would say back in the day,
not so far back,
there was the whole discussion of, you know, how do we make this into
something
business?
else.
And we are seeing that it's not as advanced as we would see in perhaps some global north cities, but yes, it is there. There are areas that there are deficiencies, but you may only be seeing a singer, but behind that singer, there's a writer, there's a producer, there's an engineer,
the management aspect.
All those jobs in that singular ecosystem, and then that music goes into a film, right? Or that music is sold for. When you get an elevator, you can hear someone sounding sing.
Or he's using a catwalk.
Or using a catwalk. All that is the economics of that person living and breathing as a creative.
The question is it really open to the average Barbadian artist, the average Caribbean artist?
Oh yes, on our our national registry alone, we have over 4,000 practitioners registered, and who also access the benefits of our Culture Industries Act. And our Culture Industries Act has also modeled for Jamaica and other countries in the region who've taken what they saw as the best practices and they've implemented them into their systems. For example, to register for Ground Market, you have to be a registered practitioner. And we were panicking and saying, well, maybe they don't have it in some of the OECS. And people have them. They were like, yes, we have. So
how many people are you catering for at the Grand Market?
Just about 350.
Okay. And these are Barbadians and those coming from within the region?
From the entire region.
And the world. So we have 3 examples here. My colleagues are a little shy, but Andre is an opera singer. And he studied opera singing in the UK. He did his master's in the arts, in arts management. Michelle is doing her doctorate in arts and theater. So I'm the elder in the group. So going back again to 1981, for us coming out, there wasn't CXC music. Well, we had music, but we didn't have CXC dance or CXC theater. Now you have that. You can do a full degree at community college and the university in arts and dance and film. And some of those young people are working in things like social media, producing their own films. The artists.
And I'll just say, at BCC, it's more than just dance and film and those things. It's the full gamut of the arts at BCC, including arts management. That was my plug.
So, I mean, it's way different. And even 30 years ago, I remember in the 80s, coming out of that 1981 period, for us, we were semi-professional. We were amateurs. And we used to do Talk Tent and getting a check in 1988 and 1989 for $5,000. $5,000 is a lot of money now. And, you know, with Sade, Leon Slinger, and all of us, and we went on a trip to Venezuela. So, you know, it is viable. It's a viable option. And I think it's a good time to be alive, where parents are no longer saying, forget about that, that's not viable. I think all 3 of us here are examples of the viability of the arts. And I would encourage all parents with young kids, teenagers, even up in their 20s, to come out to CARIFESTA, to inspire them, get them involved in something that's artistic and creative, sports even, because it builds confidence. That's very important.
Okay. Miss Leonard, are you still on the line? Are you still with us?
Yes, I am, and you can drop the myth and you can call me Josanne.
Would you like to make an input on this particular topic, this particular issue about making the arts viable for people who are artistic?
Creativity.
Well, I mean, how much time you say you're extending your program by tonight?
Only half an hour.
Okay.
We could spend the whole day,
I'm
right?
just joking. I mean, because this is a very serious conversation. I heard Andre referring to the Cultural Industries Act here in Barbados, etc., etc. I think, it's pretty significant to me that the Minister of Culture is the Prime Minister of this country. And I think that says something about the signal importance that a Caribbean leader places on the importance of culture. But let's be blunt about what we're talking about here. All of the things that we can feel good about and we must feel good about and we must celebrate. But culture, the cultural economy and the creative industries where cultural workers and cultural production intersect now with what you're talking about, how to make a living in the market. We have to get really very serious in this region from a policy perspective, in other words, what governments across the region do to ensure that pipeline, that framework and the pipeline exists in a way in which it is not itinerant. It's not every so often we come back to the conversation about the importance of the creative economy and whatever it's being called now, orange economy, and maybe it might be orange and purple in the next iteration. I'm not meaning to poo-poo these things. I think it really is bringing us back to basics. In the same way in which we've grown other sectors. I always use the analogy in Trinidad and Tobago of the oil industry. And the oil and gas industry, we had to build pipelines and refineries and learn distribution models and all of those kinds of things. And it's the same thing with the cultural economy. And some of the topics and some of the things that we have to continue to confront is that we get a lot of pushback about, cultural people not organized, they wouldn't register their business, they wouldn't this, they wouldn't that. But we know what ordinary people face, for example, going to our banks and trying to open a bank account. Much less when you talk about someone who is a cultural entrepreneur or a cultural enterprise, a creative enterprise. They're doing other jobs. They may not even be full-time doing what they're doing because they have bills to pay. They have a mortgage, they have children, they have car installments and the rest of it. So I think these are issues that we shouldn't be shying away from in the same way that we're tackling issues of food security and food sovereignty. Are we going to continue to use billions of US dollars to import food from which we are deriving lots of NCDs? Or are we going to just pony up and talk about how we're going to grow our food and feed ourselves? And what is the link with the cultural economy? Well, at the end of the day, it is not art is separate and creativity is separate. These things intersect and run through each other. So when you talk about culinary arts, which is good old-fashioned how we cook the food, and how we bring our own twist to it, haute cuisine and the rest of it, it's the foods that we grow. Are we going to have culinary arts based on how much imports we bring in from all over the place to make good on the food that we prepare? Or are we going to be looking at the foods that we had poo-pooed of, when we were thinking because you wouldn't eat breadfruit, or you wouldn't eat saltfish, or you wouldn't eat this, or you wouldn't eat that because you have to eat the processed food that was coming in via importation because that meant that you were doing better. Well, we're doing better. We have a higher incidence of NCDs. So culture in its broadest sense is what I always keep coming back to, because those three able-bodied people, they're talking about everything to do with CARIFESTA. But I'm always thinking of our conversations about culture are really about how we define ourselves, how we interface with our environment, how we grow our food and feed ourselves, the transformation of our education system So they're not pushing everybody down a pipeline to become a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant. Because at the end of the day, our young people could see Marlon James, yes, but is Marlon James the exception, or do we want to make Marlon James the rule? Do we want to make Damian Marcano the exception with all the films that he's making and working on big Netflix series all over LA and all over the world, and not have Caribbean cinema? So the importance of CARIFESTA is all of the celebration. It's all of the exposure. It's all of the interaction. It's all of the exchanges and new relationships and old friends. But it also, most importantly, is about anchoring ourselves and putting ourselves in a position to be masters of our own destiny. And you know, my closing point on this, because I'm getting so much feedback, so I don't even know if I'm sounding, if I'm making sense.
You are.
But at the end of the day, there's so much sort of despair in a sense and hopelessness. Hopelessness at home because we're facing rising levels, and now it's happening in Barbados, of youth disenfranchisement and the rest of it. When you look at a young brother, let me use that youngster as an example. He actually, Mr. Steam, and there's some of that stuff that's X-rated. But he really sort of came into his own over COVID, doing his miting and whatever it is. He comes from what they would call one of the most high-risk communities. I even don't even like these expressions anymore, because it sets how we continue to reaffirm, even in a casual way, the inequities that exist. Now, young brother, that one song, I'm in the hotel and everybody's singing The Greatest Bend Over. No matter how many times it goes on loop. But an example of where you come from the margins, but really at the flip of a coin, you really capture the imagination and you speak to your generation. And actually somebody like him speaking to other generations as well. All them big old ladies and thing want to do the greatest bend over too. It's not just the young girls and them with the nice bodies. So, we have had a history. We have had when we hear young people talking about taking soca, taking this, taking that to the world, we forget on whose shoulders we stand. We forget that we've had people break our music out, break our literature out, break our film out. But the big disconnect is really that we have not continued to tell our stories.
Okay. Josanne, on that note.
I come back to that.
On that note.
Storytelling, all the time.
Excellent. On that note, Josanne, we're going to take a break and we're coming back with more of The People's Business.
Week after week, Scald presents exciting reports and documentaries on the most varied topics of our time. Spectacular developments and innovations, lifestyle and trends of tomorrow, mobility and tourism, health news, highlights from art and culture. Each contribution grabs the viewer with extraordinary...
Welcome back to The People's Business. Tonight we're discussing CARIFESTA 15, celebrating Caribbean arts, and our three guests in studio are Mr. Hoyte. He is with the NCF, and he is also the Grand Market Coordinator for CARIFESTA 15, Mr. Andre Hoyte. We have Ms. Michelle Hinkson-Cox, who is the artistic lead for the festival, and the logistics coordinator, Mr. Ian Walcott Skinner. And all of you, you have some amazing roles to execute. We've also had online with us the Global Communications Director, Ms. Josanne Leonard. Now, this is our final segment and we're going to be wrapping up. I want to drill down into the Grand Market. You said 300 people are going to be participating. They have to have been registered artists.
Yeah.
What is really going to be happening at this Grand Market? Where is it going to be held? You've already said it's going from 8 a.m. to midnight. I have not forgotten that.
So the Grand Market is the hub where all of the trading of culture happens. So whether it's performances, whether it's intangible cultural heritage that people are experiencing through demonstrations, or whether it's the physical sales of products that are created as a result of services or the skills of people who are creative. So we have specific categories, which is gourmet, for example. When we say gourmet, we're talking about products that are made from the indigenous foods and products from the Caribbean. So whether it's sauces, whether it's packed sweets and confectionery, whether it's particular flours that we make from our breadfruit and those sort of things, and cassava, it's all that you experience in the gourmet, whether it's rum, whether it's wine from Aki's, tamarind, all that you get to see from all of the vendors who are selling those particular products. There's fashion, there's a fashion emporium, which includes not just the runway show, but also people who are selling their fashion and apparel that they design and they handmade. It's all handmade, it's not imported products. There's spa and wellness. During COVID, the spa and wellness sector became the fastest growing sector in Barbados and across the Caribbean. So persons who are making candles, who are making special scents, who are making lip balms, who are making makeup from Caribbean homegrown products. We also have our home and accents, which could range from visual arts to soft furnishings to special gift items, all handmade. Those are our main categories. And of course, we have a bookshop where all the literature that's written from writers across the Caribbean will also be featured. It's going to be all held in Waterford Place, as Ian would have mentioned previously. So we have a large, what we call a spaceship, which we will have in that space. It comes outfitted with country booths as well. So each country gets a booth where they can also, whether they're promoting tourism or something special. It also has a Caribbean Eat Street, so you're getting the food from all of the countries that are invited, getting a chance to come and buy the food, taste the food. Someone mentioned about the lobsters that the Antiguans brought in 2017, for example.
For $20.
For $20. So you get to experience the culinary delights of all of the countries as well. And of course, there are performances during the day as well as the country nights in the evening. We also have 2 studios where people are going to be writing and recording music. Right? We have the Live Lab, which is a collaboration of dance, visual arts, poetry, and you just come and create. In that session, we have from 5 a.m. each night what we call the jam sessions. So people just come together, create music, words, lyrics, and just create something and enjoy that session.
Did you say 5 a.m. in the morning?
5 p.m.
Yeah.
5 p.m. And we have a number of fashion shows. Important to all of this process, from a business perspective, we have our knowledge platform. So we're bringing persons to talk about designing for global distribution, for example, supply chain challenges based on our partnerships with Inex Moda out of Colombia, for example, and Agam out of Ghana. So those are the kind of examples of the sort of knowledge and interaction that the everyday person who also may be interested in coming into the creative industries can tap into, as well as the persons who are going to be at the market. And we have knowledge labs every single day at the Grand Market as well. And a whole set of entertainment, country nights. So at night, 2 to 3 countries also do their performances. So it's a really exciting space to be in. Of course, we have the supporting venue operation command center. We have health there. We have all the things that are required in a space to make it really work.
Okay, well, in fact, we have one more break and we're going to take it now and come back with more of the people's business.
Week after week, Scold presents exciting reports and documentaries on the most varied topics of our time. Spectacular developments and innovations, lifestyle and trends of tomorrow, mobility and tourism, health news, highlights from art and culture. Each contribution grabs the viewer with extraordinary images and stories and takes him into fascinating worlds which he experiences here exclusively and up close. We're there when companies and specialists develop super satellites for a global network in space and can look behind the scenes. Scold is a window to everything that is there or is yet to come. Fly with us through time to better understand today and tomorrow. You've always wanted that. Scold, a look into the future.
The Barbadian audience about all the great things to come. I will wrap them on their fingers and say we had some great visuals, and Andre describing his grand market. It's a fantastic piece of thing to look at, but I'm sure it's going to happen. So all I want to say to all my Bajan brethren and sisters is come out and let us celebrate ourselves. Let us hang with our Caribbean brothers and sisters. Wherever you are, in every parish, in every community, come out with your little basket, come out with your lime, cook your sauce and pudding, or pudding and sauce, depending on what order it goes in. There is something for everyone, but the most important part of all of this is how we use this occasion to really meet and greet and celebrate ourselves. So thank you so much for the opportunity to drop in tonight, and I'm sure that CBC is going to be on the leading edge of helping to amplify and share and drill down into all this great content to come out of CARIFESTA 15.
Thank you so much, Josanne. That's Josanne Leonard. She is the Global Communications Director for CARIFESTA 15. Now, over to our Logistics Coordinator. 33 countries expected. How many people in total are we catering for? And these are your final words.
Yeah, in terms of delegates, we're looking at approximately 3,000. That has nothing to do with the additional visitors. We have over 3,000 rooms that are available, special rates by the BHTA. That's on our website. A number of Airbnb properties are there available as well. So for our brothers and sisters coming from around the world and the Caribbean, those special packages are available as we speak. We're still looking for a few volunteers. You can go to the website, carifesta.net, send us a WhatsApp message, and we will respond almost immediately. We're still looking for drivers of private vehicles, 30-seaters, 20-seaters, 50-seaters. That call is going out tomorrow because we have to move all of these delegates. We have quite a number already, but we're looking for some additional. So the space to go to right now, or currency right now, is information. That's online at carifesta.net, and all of our social media links are there together with our WhatsApp page.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Ian Walcott Skinner.
Thank you.
Mr. Andre Hoyte, final words.
Just 2 points. I would say that this is the greatest opportunity for us to kickstart trading in the region. We don't do enough regional trade, so we don't get to buy from each other, and the ground market provides that unique opportunity. There are over 20 million potential customers in the Caribbean, and so one of our strategies coming coming out of CARIFESTA and legacy is really how do we develop continuous trading amongst our producers of cultural goods for the festival. And so CARIFESTA will trigger that. And to support a lot of what we're doing at the Grand Market, we will be having our solar farms and really looking at our sustainability in the process. So our sustainable lounge, rather, is providing sustainable water for the space, the solar panels to run the energy in the space. So it's bridging the gap of sustainability and trade in a real way.
Okay. Miss Michelle Hinkson-Cox, now you are the artistic lead of CARIFESTA 15. Is it a privilege? Is it a challenge? How are you viewing it?
Stacey, it is definitely a privilege. Again, you know, I am kind of a CARIFESTA baby in 1981. Plugging that in there too, but it is definitely a privilege. I don't think that I could ask for any other role to adequately honor my country, to serve my country and to serve the region. It has been wonderful. It's definitely a challenge when you were talking about not just a regional festival, but all these global partners that are involved. It is definitely a challenge, but I have to say I have the most amazing team working with me, and they make the challenge so much smoother to navigate. It has been wonderful, you know, learning the cultural diplomacy, being able to interact with my brothers and sisters and culture across the region. And I think that this is really a fantastic opportunity, not just for me as the artistic lead or for us as a team running this festival, but for us as a nation. It really is a fantastic opportunity because we are going to see such an influx of cultures that we don't get to see. It's not often that, you know, the average Barbadian gets to go to Ghana and see a production or go to the US and see certain dance groups. You know, we don't get those opportunities every day. And to have all of that being brought to your doorstep and to be able to interact with these people in conversations and workshops, it really is a wonderful opportunity. And I'm looking forward to August, for sure.
In 60 seconds, what are your final words for Barbadians tonight?
Come out. Come out. And not just come out as audience, come out as volunteers, come out as the drivers, come out, you know, be a part of the festival, liaison officers, participate in the festival. And I think that you're going to get an experience like never before those 10 days in August.
Okay. On that note, we are saying ciao for now on The People's Business tonight. We were discussing CARIFESTA 15. It's happening in Barbados. We are the hosts from August 22nd to August 31st. And on behalf of the head of news and current affairs, Mr. Kent Jerson, thank you for tuning in. On behalf of our technical crew, thank you. I'm Stacey Russell. Looking forward to seeing you again on the next edition of The People's Business. Your business.